In a country where women hold some of the world's highest academic achievements and dominate the workforce in many sectors, Japan has never had a single female prime minister. But could that be about to change? As Japan faces population decline, economic challenges, and shifting social expectations, the pressure to break this historic barrier has never been greater. The question is, will Japan finally see its first woman lead the nation, or will tradition keep the glass ceiling firmly in place? Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we dive deep into a question that has captured attention both inside and outside Japan. Could Japan finally have its first female prime minister? Despite being one of the world's leading economies, Japan lags behind much of the globe in gender equality, particularly in politics. While countries from the UK to India, Germany to Finland, and even neighboring South Korea have seen women rise to the highest political office, Japan remains an outlier. But times are changing. From Yuriko Koike, the charismatic governor of Tokyo, to Sanai Takaichi, a longtime member of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, several women have emerged as potential candidates to shatter this century-old tradition. In this video, we'll explore the history of women in Japanese politics, why Japan has struggled to elevate female leaders, the cultural and political barriers that persist, the most likely women who could take the role, and whether Japan is truly ready for this historic leap. Let's begin. Japan's political system is shaped by deep traditions, long-standing hierarchies, and male-dominated power networks. Since the establishment of modern democracy in Japan after World War II, the country has had more than 30 prime ministers. Every single one has been male. Yet, this wasn't always unthinkable. Japan has a long history of powerful women at different points in time. In the 7th and 8th centuries, Japan was ruled by several female emperors, such as Empress Suko and Empress Koken. In feudal Japan, women like Hojo Masako, the wife of Minamoto no Yoritomo, wielded enormous influence behind the scenes, guiding political decisions. And in the 20th century, after World War II, women gained the right to vote in 1946, leading to a record number of female politicians entering parliament. However, as Japan rebuilt itself, politics became dominated by men, particularly through the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, which has controlled government for most of the post-war era. This created a boys' club environment, where political dynasties, sons of former leaders, often took center stage, leaving little room for women. So, while Japan has a tradition of powerful women in history, its modern democracy has been remarkably male-only at the very top. To understand why Japan hasn't had a female prime minister, we need to look at several cultural, structural, and political factors. 1. Social expectations and gender roles. Japanese society has long placed women in the role of caretakers and men as breadwinners. Even today, surveys show that many believe women should focus on family rather than politics or leadership. This mindset discourages women from pursuing high-level careers. 2. The political pipeline problem. To become prime minister in Japan, one must rise through the ranks of parliament and party politics. Since women make up only around 10% of Japan's parliament, the pool of possible candidates is very small compared to countries with higher female representation. 3. Male-dominated networks. The LDP functions on insider networks, backroom deals, and support from political factions. These are overwhelmingly led by men, making it difficult for women to break through. 4. Media scrutiny. Women in politics face harsher media coverage. Female politicians are often judged more on their appearance, family status, or femininity than their policies. 5. Slow progress in gender equality rankings. Japan consistently ranks low in the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index, often near the bottom among advanced economies. This reflects not just politics, but broader gender inequality across society. These challenges have kept the political glass ceiling firmly in place. Despite these barriers, a few women have come close to reaching the top. 1. Takako Doi. In 1986, Takako Doi became the first woman to lead a major Japanese political party, the Social Democratic Party. She inspired many women but never became prime minister. 2. Yuriko Koike. Perhaps the most high-profile female politician today, Koike is the governor of Tokyo. Charismatic, media-savvy, and fluent in Arabic and English, She once served as Japan's defense minister. Many saw her as a strong contender for prime minister, but her career has been complicated by clashes with the LDP. 3. Seiko Noda, former internal affairs minister. She has run for the LDP leadership in the past. Noda has been outspoken on issues like childcare and gender equality, but has struggled to gain broad factional support. 4. Sanai Takaichi, a conservative politician with strong ties to former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Takaichi ran in the LDP leadership race in 2021. She didn't win, but her candidacy showed that a female prime minister is no longer unimaginable. Each of these women has chipped away at the glass ceiling, but none have yet shattered it. So, could things finally change? 1. The demographic crisis. Japan is at a crossroads unlike any other developed nation. The country has one of the lowest fertility rates in the world, hovering around 1.3 births per woman, far below the replacement level of 2.1. At the same time, nearly 30% of Japan's population is over the age of 65, making it the most rapidly aging society on Earth. This demographic crisis is not just about numbers, it's about survival. With fewer children being born, schools are closing, entire rural towns are vanishing, and the labor force is shrinking year after year. Economists warn that Japan's future prosperity depends on mobilizing untapped resources, and the biggest untapped resource is women. Female leadership is increasingly seen as crucial for driving policies that could reverse these trends. Workplace reforms to support dual-income families. Affordable childcare to allow women to stay in the workforce. Parental leave policies that encourage men to share caregiving responsibilities. Flexible work systems that reflect modern family life. For decades, male politicians have promised reforms but delivered little. A female prime minister could bring urgency, empathy, and lived experience to an issue that Japan can no longer afford to ignore. In this sense, Japan's demographic crisis might be the very force that makes female leadership inevitable. 2. International pressure. Japan is one of the most advanced economies in the world, yet when it comes to female leadership, it stands alone among its peers. Every other member of the G7 has, at some point, had a woman at the helm. Margaret Thatcher in the UK, Angela Merkel in Germany, Edith Crescent in France, Giorgia Meloni in Italy, Kim Campbell in Canada. Even South Korea, a nation with similar Confucian traditions, elected Park Geun-hye in 2012. Japan's absence is glaring. On the world stage, it weakens the image of a nation that prides itself on innovation and modernity. At international summits, the visual contrast is striking. While other countries rotate female heads of government, Japan is always represented by men in dark suits. Foreign partners have subtly encouraged Japan to improve gender diversity, and multinational companies operating in Japan are increasingly pushing for reforms in boardrooms and leadership. The longer Japan waits, the more it risks being seen as an outlier, clinging to outdated gender norms. 3. Rising female voices. Inside Japan, a quiet but powerful shift is taking place. The younger generation, particularly women in their 20s and 30s, are far more vocal about equality than their parents' generation. We see this in the rise of grassroots movements. Campaigns demanding better maternity leave protections. Student groups advocating for gender balance in universities. Social media amplifying voices that once would have been silenced by tradition. The hashtag #Kutu movement, for instance, drew national attention when women began protesting mandatory high heels in workplaces. What started as a small protest grew into a national conversation about the absurdities of gender expectations. Even in politics, younger female lawmakers are beginning to carve out space. They are fewer in number, but they represent a cultural shift that is hard to ignore. For many young Japanese, the idea of a female prime minister is no longer radical. It's overdue. 4. The end of factional politics. For decades, Japanese leadership was decided less by the public and more by the internal factions of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, LDP. These political clans were dominated by men, often sons and grandsons of previous politicians, who traded favors and secured leadership through backroom deals. But this old system is weakening. Generational turnover, corruption scandals, and the decline of faction bosses have eroded the traditional hierarchy. More and more, leadership races are being decided by public popularity and media image rather than factional loyalty. This shift opens the door for outsiders, people who do not come from established political dynasties or who break the mold of the traditional Japanese male politician. And who better fits that description than a woman? A female candidate with broad public appeal, media charisma, and a reformist message could bypass the factional machinery that once kept her out. In this new political landscape, the unthinkable may suddenly become possible. 5. The symbolic impact. Even before policy changes, the symbolic impact of Japan electing a female prime minister would be monumental. It would mark the end of an era in which leadership was synonymous with masculinity. It would tell every Japanese girl that the highest office in the land is not beyond her reach. And it would project to the world that Japan is embracing a new chapter in its democracy. Symbolism matters. When Angela Merkel took office in Germany, she was not just a leader. She became a global symbol of resilience and pragmatism. When Jacinda Ardern led New Zealand, she showed how empathy and strength could coexist in politics. Japan's first female prime minister would carry similar weight. She would not only represent policy change, but also a cultural shift, one that could ripple through every sector, from business to education, and reshape Japan's global image as a modern, forward-looking society. So, could things finally change? Japan's challenges are immense, but they also create opportunities. Demographics, global expectations, social activism, weakening political traditions, and the sheer power of symbolism all point to one thing. The stage is finally set. The question now is not whether Japan can have a female prime minister, but whether the right leader will seize the moment. Let's look more closely at the women most likely to break through. Yuriko Koike, the outsider. As governor of Tokyo, Koike has shown strong leadership, especially during the 2020 Olympics and the COVID-19 pandemic. She remains popular among urban voters, but her strained relationship with the LDP could make it hard for her to win leadership within the ruling party. Sanai Takaichi, the conservative contender. Takaichi appeals to the LDP's conservative base and has strong allies. If she consolidates support, she could make another run for party leadership, and from there, the premiership. Seiko Noda, the policy advocate. While she lacks broad factional support, Noda is respected for her advocacy on social policies. If Japan's voters demand more focus on family and childcare reforms, she could become more prominent. If Japan were to have its first female prime minister, it would mark a historic turning point. Domestically, it could inspire more women to enter politics, reshaping Japan's political landscape for generations. Socially, it would challenge traditional gender roles, signaling that leadership is not limited to men. Internationally, Japan would be seen as a more progressive democracy, aligning more closely with other advanced nations. However, simply electing a woman is not a silver bullet. The true impact would depend on her policies, leadership style, and ability to navigate Japan's deeply entrenched political system. So, could Japan finally have its first female prime minister? The answer is yes, but only if political will, public opinion, and timing align. The women are there. The capability is there. But the question remains whether Japan is truly ready to shatter a tradition that has lasted for over 70 years of modern democracy. If and when it happens, it won't just be a victory for one woman. It will be a defining moment for Japan as a nation. The glass ceiling may be thick, but every crack brings it closer to breaking. Thanks for watching. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our future deep dives. And now I want to hear from you. Do you think Japan will elect a female prime minister within the next decade? Let's discuss in the comments. Until next time, stay curious.